Welcome to our series on breaking down sun salutations. So we're looking at each individual pose in a Surya Namaskar sequence, we're breaking them down, and we're learning how to do it pose by pose. So this past week, we've been working on forward folds or Uttanasana and all the different components of what it takes to build your body intelligence to do this forward fold in a sun salutation. I encourage you to take a look at the previous videos on forward folds to look at different concepts that we've worked on, including lengthening the hamstrings and a little bit more subtle concepts there as well. So today we're going to talk about how to get up from a forward fold in sun salutations without compromising the lower back, and how to use and how to gain mobility in those hip rotators so that we can really fold forward and not have to round the back. So here we go. So when we are, just gonna adjust this. Okay, so we're here and we come down to our start the sun salutations. We come to our forward bend and we understand that we're rotating the hip around the head of the femur. So these are hip rotators, and sometimes there's a lot of tightness here that we can work on so that we can perform this movement and not have to round the spine here. So one thing that I want to bring up is while coming up from this pose, we have the knees very straight. So we've looked at the importance of really working on the hamstring so that we're not bending the knee. So this is good to have as an emergency, right? So that if your back goes out, you bend the knees to protect the back. However, if it's just causing a little tucking here on the hip so that you're protecting your lower back, but it's not really addressing the issue of a tight hamstring. So we work on the hamstring so that we can do this pose with very straight legs, not even a micro bend in the knee. So that we work on this first. And then we understand the mechanics of coming up. So if you keep using the flexibility of the lower back to come up, it can be very damaging to the lower back. So the lower back is bending one way and the other way, one way and the other way, and eventually it's going to become a weak point here. So we make sure that we don't come up by using that flexibility of the lower back, meaning by arching the lower back. So we can arch the upper back, but not the lower back by coming up. So how do I do that? All right, so first I make my legs very active. I lift the kneecaps and I push my sit bones up. And I place my hand on my the skin of my glutes here at the top, and I pull these hands back down towards, the opposite wall here. And I come up, when I'm here horizontally, I don't overarch my back. I come up by dragging the skin back so that I am not arching my back to come up, and I'm not rounding my back to come up. I'm using that motion of the skin of the back of the glutes here coming down to come up, and using the strength of the legs. So that's the motion to come up. So you feel like that skin is just being dragged back, and we come up from there. So do this, maybe you can pause the video here and you can practice this a few times so that you understand the movement in a slow, slower kind of pace. And then you can do it faster on your own once you have that sensation. So make the legs very active, lift the kneecaps. You can push the sit bones up, and there is a little bit of an untucking position until you get here to the horizontal, when your body is horizontal with the floor. And here we start this dragging down, almost a tucking to come up. All right, just so that we are not using the lower back here to arch our body up on sun salutations. Okay, so that's the first aspect. The second aspect that we're going to look at today, or the second point, is how to work on those hip rotators. So here we are. I'm going to set up a couple blocks. So I'm going to do this on this pose called Baddha Konasana, and I sit in Baddha Konasana and I see, okay, where are my knees? If my knees are above my hips, I'm going to sit on a height. If I am able to bring my knees all the way down to the floor, then I don't need a height. Okay, so I will sit on a height. So I'm sitting on 2 blocks. Okay, here we are. And because I'm sitting on a height, I will have to also elevate my heels when I sit. So if I am sitting on a height, I have this plane here, my leg. So you see it's kind of like a ramp or at an angle. And then my feet are at this horizontal level here with the ground. And this change in plane will cause a torque to my knee. So what I have to do is I have to elevate the heels so they're in the same plane as my thigh. All right. So you can use a rolled up towel. You can use any kind of support that you can place underneath your heels. All right. So bring the heels as close as you can to the body, and make sure that the height is enough to get those knees below or at the same level of your hips. So if I'm still, if my knees are still a little bit higher than my hips, then just add another block there so you have a little more height. So I'm here on this pose. And if you need a little support from a belt, this is not necessary, as long as you can keep your heels touching, so both heels really pressing against each other, then you don't need a belt. So I'm going to show you a few ways to use a belt in this pose to improve the pose, but also to help the legs stay together. So I'm going to garland myself with the belt, put it not around the waist, but below the hip bone and around my knee, making sure that the buckle is never around the skin of the knee or in the kneecap. So the buckle always has to be on this outside part of the leg. I'm going to place the belt there and make sure that the skin of the knee here is going out. So I would not want to tighten this way because it would move the skin of my knee this way and that can cause injury. So making sure that my buckle's on the outside of the leg, so when I tighten, it's this movement of the skin. So that's very important, right? Making sure that buckle is not in contact with any part of my knee, and then putting the belt in this way so that the back of the belt is parallel with the floor, and here it's below my hip. So this will help me improve in this pose. So I do the same thing to the other side, and I almost get immediate relief on the tightness here in the groin, when I'm practicing this pose. So I do the same thing. I put the belt around the knee, making sure the buckle, the middle part of the buckle, is not touching any part of this bony area in my knee. Making sure the belt goes down that crease, so below my hip bone. And then if I have to tighten the belt like I do on this side, I tighten it this way, so the skin movement is towards the outside there. So then I can almost try to break that belt, pushing the knee into the belt, so that I almost want my knees to grow out this way, and pushing the heels together, making sure that my heels are still a little bit elevated, and I can really work this pose like that. So here's me not making the pose active, and here's me actively pushing my knees out towards the belt, never down, out. Right, so this is a great way to practice Baddha Konasana and to really start working on releasing and lengthening those muscles and getting you to a point where you can sit with the knees in the ground. So this is a great way to practice. So then lift the body, soften the abdomen, and this is how we would do it. So I wanted to show you with this angle on how to do this. So I would pause the video and maybe practice, stay here and breathe for about 3 minutes. If that's not possible, you can do 3 sets of 1 minute with a downward dog in between. That would be great. And then I'll I'll set up on the wall so I can show you the next part of this exercise. So first we go on Uttanasana and we practice coming up without arching the lower back, without bending the knees or rounding the back. So we practice that. So we come up and breathe. So exhale if you're in Uttanasana, inhale, come up. After we've done that, we sit on Baddha Konasana. If you want to try the belts out, it's a great way to practice. If not, you can sit in Baddha Konasana on a height if you need it. Sit here for about 3 minutes. And I'm going to set up for the next section of this video. All right, so for this next section, we're going to actually start really working on the rotators. So the way we do that, I wanted to show you this angle. We come back and set up, you don't have to come out of Baddha Konasana, of the pose you just did for 3 minutes, because I'm just getting out because I want to show you this angle. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to set it up like we had before. Oh, sorry. Okay. And all right, so below the hip. Okay. So I have my belts set. And I'm going to bring a chair or a block depending on the flexibility in your hip rotators. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come forward. All right, and adjust the belts. Okay, I'm going to come forward and use that rotation to start working on the rotation of my hip, okay, and how much mobility I can develop there. So what I want to do here is avoid rounding my back. So the purpose here is to learn and how to teach the body and create mobility in that hip rotation around the head of the femur. So this is one of the best poses to do this. So sit on a height, make sure that the knees are lower than the hips. If you are sitting on the height, make sure that you add a little bit of height underneath both heels. Press both heels together onto each other and take a few breaths here. All right, so inhale, exhale, and then as you inhale, come down. And exhale here. So make sure that as much as you can that you're not bending or rounding the back. So inhale, lift the chest here and come down. And then come back up. And so we repeat this motion. If you need a little bit of extra height, you can even use the back of the chair. And the point is not to get down as far as you can, but to start releasing those rotators and creating that mobility. So if you do a few repetitions of this until you have this rhythm of inhaling, exhaling, coming in and out. So come out, then inhale, come up and look up. Inhale, come down, exhale. Inhale, come up and look up. And then pressing the heels together. Keep repeating these so you can do 10 sets of 30 seconds where you're coming down and coming up. Once you're able to come down a little bit further without rounding the back, then you can stay in the position here. You can rest your head on your support and you can stay for 1 minute and work yourself up to 3 minutes. Really breathing, releasing any tension that you discover around the head of the femur and these rotators. So once Once you have a little bit more mobility, then come down, press the heels together, and slowly come down. All right, resting the forehead and repeat. So this would be the third exercise you would do to really release this head of the femur and gain a lot more rotation there. All right. So this is really great prep for forward bends, especially forward bends in sun salutations, where you're repeating those postures over and over. I hope these exercises have been helpful and that you've been able to do them. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks.